It's Thursday, June 4, and time for your Barbados Today morning news update. Government's finances get a boost as a result of the International Monetary Fund's approval of almost $280 million in support. The IMF's executive board and officials from the Ministry of Finance met yesterday and concluded the third review of its extended arrangement under the Extended Fund Facility for Barbados. The completion of the review of the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Program allows government to draw the equivalent of US $139 million, bringing total disbursements to around US $283 million. Of the $280 million, Prime Minister Mia Mottley said $180 million would assist the country to get through the COVID-19 pandemic. She said some of the remaining money could be used to shore up the country's foreign reserves, which is currently at $1.7 billion.
In spite of Kevin being very comfortable and we being very comfortable with the 21 weeks of import cover, the money approved by the IMF earlier today, the 140 million US, roughly 280 million Barbados, will carry our import cover probably close, certainly over 1.9 billion, whether we choose to use the whole amount there or use part there and part elsewhere. We now have options.
There will be a cap on the Barbados Optional Savings Scheme to prevent it from being oversubscribed. Word of this from Prime Minister Mia Mottley, who assured that while government is hoping to raise $100 million of capital works from the initiative, there is a possibility that the figure could rise to between $110 and $120 million based on the high level of interest it has received so far. She said discussions are still ongoing with the Debt Management Unit as to what the final target figure would be.
And we've said that in the same way that we took care of the savings bonds, we're doing it with this. Okay? And that's why we're not open. As much as there's tremendous demand that is appearing, we are still going to cap it at a certain amount because whatever happens, we must be able to repay.
Attorney General Dale Marshall has granted an exemption from restrictions under the COVID-19 directive to organizers of a small protest march over the killing of African-American George Floyd by a white police officer in the U.S. But in sharp contrast to similar demonstrations in the United States and around the world, only 10 people in masks, armed with hand sanitizer and practicing social distancing, will be seen at 3 locations demonstrating their solidarity with the struggle for civil rights come Saturday. The organizers must also obtain the permission of the Commissioner of Police for the protest to be held near the U.S. Embassy. The demonstration is being organized by the Caribbean Movement for Peace and Integration, the June 13, 1980 movement, and noted attorney at law Lalo Hanneman.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from the region, the Bahamas Commissioner of Police, Paul Roll, outlines plans for behavioral reform in the force as he addresses concerns of police brutality in the country. More in this report from ZNS News.
His plans for behavioral reform come against the backdrop of mass protests in the U.S. sparked by the killing of George Floyd, a black man who died at the hands of police.
We have been addressing that, and I've taken a more proactive approach to dealing with breaches of discipline in the Royal Bahamas Police Force and trying to clean that up. And I think we're making some good progress internally. You're going to see some things. We've also been meeting with the police inspectorate, and that is the process that we have ongoing.
Now, the police commissioner says there is a compendium of standing orders that he's reviewing because times have changed and the police have to modernize to address today's issues. Roll says there are plans to promote more officers during this 3-year tenure as senior officers move out, and his crime management strategy calls for a certain number of ranks.
And finally, the World Health Organization has announced that it will resume clinical trials of hydroxychloroquine in the treatment of COVID-19 after a temporary pause. The WHO's Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus made the announcement at a press conference yesterday.
As you know, last week, the executive group of the Solidarity Trial decided to implement a temporary pause of the hydroxychloroquine arm of the trial because of concerns raised about the safety of the drug. This decision was taken as a precaution while the safety data were reviewed. On the basis of the available mortality data, the members of the committee recommended that there are no reasons to modify the trial protocol. The executive group received this recommendation and endorsed the continuation of all arms of Solidarity trial, including hydroxychloroquine. The executive group will communicate with the principal investigators in the trial about resuming hydroxychloroquine arm of the trial.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.